Hello, hello, hello. I am going to assume that no one is here when I started because like my good friend Salem Oleander, did not send the link out before I started. I'm going to do that now, and then we're going to get a proper intro. But first, I'm going to go to sleep because it is dark and I don't like dark. Hang on. Sending this over to the good people over at the good people on the Chill Hills land. Okay, that's live. We're good. I have a stream open. I have my chat open. We're ruining now. Let's go. Apologies for the delay. I was attempting to get a different server set up for a thing tonight, but it didn't go so well. So we are doing this instead. Also, I did say I was going to do this, so it's probably for the best that we're doing this. And this is why we're careful with how we dig. I am excavation. Oh no, I violated the tenets of archaeology, so I'm repairing my damage. Yeah, I don't really know what to do with these things when no one's in chat because I don't know if I should just play off myself or what. Like, how do I keep people entertained while I'm doing this? Let's see. There's no one here to entertain, but that also means that there's a high likelihood nothing I say will be heard. So, what can I say? Hmm. I reread Animal Man recently, by Grant Morrison. Great comic from the late 80s, early 90s. I believe it was published 88 to 90. Yes, Grant Morrison's Animal Man. Grant Morrison has gone on the record for those who don't know and are inexplicably watching this VOD. Grant Morrison is a comic book writer originally from Scotland. They are best known for being absolutely insane in their comics in the best way. Um, they are also in real life a practicing chaos magician, which is a very cool thing that I don't understand fully. I want to, but unfortunately it does not exactly fit with the magics that I do have knowledge of, because that is the thing. Um, anyway, they're a practicing chaos magician, best-selling author for decades. As they put it, basically after Watchmen came out, and I could do a whole lecture on Watchmen, but that one does deserve an audience and a PowerPoint probably. Yeah, probably for a subscriber special or something. But anyway, Ace, 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 Ace. Hello, you have saved me from talking to myself. How is the weather in your area? I understand that was a concern. Yeah. I am talking, so if you can't hear me, let me know. Oh, the weather is normal. That's great. That's great to hear. I was a little worried about that. Storms are scary and bad. I don't exactly remember where you live, and I believe that you said before that your weather is spooky. Are you using the word spooky now? Yes. Your weather is um normally not capable of being, or normally capable of being unnerving, which is probably man storms for you. I don't know. Look, I grew up in California. The concept of rain is still something I'm getting used to, and I've lived in Philly for a couple of years now. Yeah. Anyway, I was talking about the last good thing I read, which is, of course, Animal Man by Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison, as I was saying earlier, is a, Scottish comic book writer who has been around since the 80s. They may have done stuff before that. Honestly, I'm not super versed with their stuff before they got picked up. But as they tell the story, basically after the success of Watchmen, they being Marvel and DC started looking all over for other absolutely wild people to come write just cutting edge weird stuff. And they found Grant Morrison in the Scottish Highlands. At the time, they were a practicing chaos magician. Not sure what else they were writing, but they were just around in Scotland. So, as you are. So, what happened was they offered Morrison the chance to write basically whatever they wanted on unknown DC character, and they decided to do Animal Man. Okay, so you live in a place with seasons. Got it. Yeah. So Animal Man is a character that basically nobody had heard of at the time, and most people still don't know about. He has still not made his way into anything big. But yes, D-list superhero Animal Man. Animal Man at the time, his only thing was he'd been invented a few decades earlier. Just generic superhero, could do things that animals nearby could do. Not much to him. So Grant Morrison, coming to America to write this comic, comes up with the idea to really focus in on just absolute dumpster tier superheroes and what their lives are like. So he has Animal Man be an out of work stuntman who has superpowers, but like barely ever uses them. Doesn't really have a reason to get out there and do things because powers kind of suck. But then he decides he wants to go full time. So it's about him and his family as he tries to do this. And then as the series goes, it gets more and more meta, and it's brilliant and one of my favorite comics. And I absolutely do not want to spoil it because I highly encourage you to go check out the Animal Man Omnibus. I will give you some content warnings for adult stuff. It is it is of the late 80s, early 90s, and Grant Morrison doesn't have the best approach to everything, and they've said themselves, they say it in the comic actually, that they're concerned that they're letting their increasingly strong opinions on animal rights influence the comic. As it goes on, Animal Man gets more into animal rights because he can feel the animals, and he starts to do more things with environmentalists and increasingly radical and violent environmentalists. It's a very interesting exploration of that topic. I would I do recommend it if you are comfortable with some darker stuff. Like it gets dark and it does a lot of comic booky things that I think if you're doing it in a comic, you have to have a really good reason to do it. But it also is just fun and awesome. There's also an entire issue where Wile E. Coyote tries to fight a cartoon god because that's Grant Morrison for you. Other Grant Morrison comics I can absolutely recommend. All Star Superman, a 12 issue miniseries basically positioning what if Superman got cancer. It is a great look at why people love Superman. It personally made me understand the character. I've been a comic fan most of my life at this point, and I don't really think I understood the character well until I read this comic. Between that and what's so funny about Truth, Justice, and the American Way, which is another great one-issue Superman story that they made into an animated movie, actually. I think All-Star Superman's a movie also, I just haven't seen it. Yeah, if you're avoiding darker stuff for mental health reasons, Ace, I don't want to get specific about it, but there are a couple moments that I would specifically flag. And if you want to hear about those later, well, you know where to find me. But yeah, All-Star Superman is a much lighter story, also by Grant Morrison. Really recommend that one. It's everything great about Superman, completely just free of having to fit into any canon or rules. It's just if you take all the best parts of Superman and you only had to do one story, just assuming people knew who Superman was, this is what you should do, and I highly recommend it. Um, yeah. So those are two things I've read recently that I really liked. Let's see. I'm writing about comics because I like comics, but yeah, Grant Morrison, I can usually recommend. I haven't read their X-Men run, and I'm a massive X-Men fan. I've been told by other people who are unhealthily attached to the X-Men that it's not the things I like about the characters. Like it doesn't examine it doesn't examine the race metaphor. It focuses more on these people being weird and disturbing. But I don't know. I don't know. At some point I should probably check it out. Um, let's see. So I've not read Grant Morrison's new X-Men. I have read All-Star Superman. Um I have read Animal Man. I have not read any of their indie stuff. I was actually just listening to a podcast about that earlier. Apologies, I'm getting a spam call right now, so if you hear that. I was listening to a podcast about some of their indie stuff earlier today. They have a couple weird things. Trying to figure out if I can recommend anything on that just based on what I know. I'm not confident enough to do that. I am confident enough to recommend Final Crisis because that is their event comic that they did. Um, there's a trend with a lot of their stuff, especially with DC, to get really meta and into the structure of stories. Like there's a good chunk of Final Crisis that in which Superman literally uh goes to fight the idea of bad endings. And without spoiling too much, I will say that a key part of winning and saving the day in Final Crisis is Superman building a machine and wishing for a happy ending. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's essentially what it boils down to. There's a theme with these. Um, yeah. Okay, we dug up a second wing. All right. I love comics. I'm ranting about comics. What do I rant about that's not Grant Morrison? Oh yeah, Jonathan Hickman's another writer I like. Which is not something I ever thought I'd say. When I was first getting into comics when I was 10, this guy Jonathan Hickman was writing the Avengers, and Hickman tends to go for very melodramatic speech patterns and storytelling. Like everything is like somebody's giving a speech. Grant Morrison sometimes does that too, but I feel like because I discovered them when I was more into that, I was much more open to it. Hickman, Hickman was writing Avengers in 2012 when I was 10, and I was not really up for that at age 10. Like their stories are about big ideas and everyone acknowledging that whatever's going on is the most important thing in the universe at that exact moment. Yes, this is turning into a comic stream. Ace, before I start explaining weird things in too much detail, how much do you know about the comic side of things? So I can pitch this well. Because I can talk about this all day. Like I joke I have a 90-minute Watchmen presentation ready to go. And I think I said before you got in that I do want to do that as a subscriber special. I think if I ever break 100 subscribers, I will do a Watchmen lecture stream. I'll make a PowerPoint and everything for it. But yeah, if you don't tell me that you've already read Jonathan Hickman's 2012 Avengers run, I'm going to begin explaining that in more detail because I can talk about that for a while. So Jonathan Hickman's Avengers comes after Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, and I haven't read all of Hickman's Fantastic Four, but his characterization, especially of Reed Richards, was like a guy obsessed with doing what he thought was the right thing, even if he didn't have the best grasp on what that was. And he's very into the sort of like flawed hero model. So when he gets to Avengers, it starts off he so sorry, his Avengers run was divided into two comics that were running simultaneously. Avengers Avengers and New Avengers. So Avengers, he picks it up. It opens with Tony Stark saying to Captain America that the Avengers need to be bigger. They need to recruit as many people as possible to take on as much as possible because, as he sees it, the world's getting more complicated. Simultaneously, in New Avengers, um, Black Panther goes outside to find another Earth about to crash into the main Marvel Earth. And he calls up the Illuminati, who in the comics were a different team from the one in the Doctor Strange movie. Um, but he calls up the Illuminati. I'll get into the members a bit later. But basically, he says, "Hey, this is bad," and they realize that the world is going to end. So Iron Man is on both teams. So basically, if you read both sides of the story, you realize that Iron Man is doing one as a response to the other, and he's trying everything he can to save the world. So meanwhile, in Avengers, they're facing bigger apocalypses than usual, but stuff that they usually handle. Like there's an alien that's trying to invade Earth, and they set up a base on Mars, like that kind of thing. But they've got a bigger team now. I believe they went up to like 22 Avengers for the bulk of the early run. But basically, all the people that you would normally think to put on Avengers are there. Spider-Man joins the team for a while. Spider-Man joins the team for the first time in forever. Wolverine's there. Shang-Chi, Spider-Woman, Hawkeye, Black Widow. Because it's 2012, of course, everyone in the original Avengers movie is on the team at this point. But Hulk's back. Hulk in the comics is basically never on the team because they treated him really poorly when he was first there, and he likes to work alone. But he's here now. So they've got the big front-facing Avengers team going on in the main book. In New Avengers, the Illuminati is meeting. It's Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Mr. Fantastic, Namor, who, if you've seen Black Panther 2, that guy, but like significantly more of an asshole. I love him. Black Panther, Black Bolt from that bad TV show, and Beast from the X-Men, because originally it was Xavier, but Xavier had been killed at that point. He's fine now because comics. Anyway, that's the New Avengers. So they're doing the darker stuff. They're trying to stop the end of the world, but they also don't want to tell anyone this is happening because they're afraid that people will get in their way and stop them from doing what they have to do. So someone shows up. So this other multiverse alien shows up in New Avengers named Black Swan. She tells the Illuminati that there is nothing they can do except blow up the other Earth before it hits them. Like, she's been with a couple other groups. They've tried literally everything else. The only option is to blow up the world. So for the first 18 issues, I want to say, I could be off on the exact number, it is the Illuminati scrambling to try anything they can think of except for blowing up a world. And it works for a bit. Like, they try a couple things. They use the Infinity Stones. They negotiate. One time they just get really lucky and there's already nobody on the planet that's about to hit Earth, so they can safely blow that one up. But the whole time, the thing is, time is running out for them. At some point, they're going to have to make that call, and none of them want to be the one to press the button. So while this is going on, meanwhile, they're still dealing with normal stuff over in Avengers. Somebody's trying to make the planet sentient, and then, of course, because this is Marvel, Thanos attacks. And this is actually where we meet Thanos' Black Order. So if you've seen Infinity War and his henchmen, like, this is where they all come from, this comic. They did an event called Infinity. It was actually... Infinity wasn't that bad. Like, Marvel gets a lot of flack, and rightfully so, because they have way too many major crossover events. They don't just do things in the comics they already have. They always have to rush out something new. Infinity was interesting because it was only 6 issues, but while it was happening, it was an 18-issue story with 6 issues taking over Avengers and 6 issues taking over New Avengers. So you had plot beats going on there, and they weren't connected. You could read one and not read the others and still have a pretty good idea of what was going on. Like, there was a single story, but it was also like 3 separate main plots. And I haven't actually read all of New Avengers for that one. I read the Avengers side of it and the Infinity comic itself. It's good. I recommend it. Infinity War takes some inspiration, not a ton from it. It's got everything. It's got all the aliens working together for a giant space war. It's got prison breakouts. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, where was I? Right. So Infinity was sort of the Act 1 end for Hickman. Hickman had, I want to say 41 issues on Avengers, roughly half that on New Avengers, because New Avengers was monthly, Avengers was bi-monthly. Yeah, that's how that works. Avengers was a bi-monthly comic at the time. So Hickman's Avengers, from there, there was a second act which kind of got into time stuff and time travel, but the culmination of that was basically... backing up. I said in New Avengers that at one point they tried using the Infinity Stones. Basically, what happened was they called Captain America and they had him use the gauntlet because they trusted him the most with that kind of power, and he physically pushed another Earth away from Earth to stop that particular incursion. However, during that incident, all the stones shattered and they couldn't use them anymore. So they told Captain America that they were afraid that the backup plan was to blow up other planets. And Captain America was not okay with that, so they had Doctor Strange wipe his mind so he couldn't stop them. So over at Avengers, the Time Stone reappears and sucks all the Avengers into the future. And at different points during this very long future and convoluted future trip, they learn what's been going on in New Avengers, and then that's the end of Act 2. Is they know what's going on and they decide they have to put a stop to this. So Act 3 starts that both Avengers and New Avengers jump 8 months ahead to the last incursion. It's revealed during these 8 months that Namor was finally the one to cross the line, and I'm realizing I'm acting like everyone knows who Namor is because Black Panther 2 came out and he was in that. If you don't know, Marvel's Aquaman, but an asshole. So Namor decided to be the one to do this. So when the other heroes realized they couldn't push the button, Namor did, and he recruited a bunch of villains to take over as the Illuminati. That includes Thanos. So that should tell you generally how this is going for him. So for these 8 months, Namor and Thanos have been blowing up planets to save Earth, and the other Illuminati are on the run from the Avengers. And let's see, how do I explain this? Oh yeah, so this Civil War is starting, the world's about to end, and they're all trying to figure out the best way to react. Ultimately, the way it all ends is in New Avengers, it's revealed that the Earths crashing into each other was caused by Doctor Doom from the Fantastic Four. So Doctor Doom, Fantastic Four villain, if you've seen those movies, you know who he is. If not, he is a super genius magical scientist dictator from a fictional European country. He is one of Marvel's greatest villains, probably the greatest human threat in Marvel. But yeah, so he's been doing this. He's been blowing up worlds. It's revealed that basically what happened was 25 years ago, another character showed up and told him that he had to kill off every version of that character. Sorry. I am telling you so out of order. Backing up. Molecule Man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if this is not making any sense. Basically, Doctor Doom finds out he has a holy mission in the multiverse, and he decides he's going to kill off every version of this one character to stop it from collapsing in on itself. Functionally, this guy comes up to him and says, "Hey, I just realized something. I'm basically a time bomb. You need to kill every version of me. And I'm coming to you, Doctor Doom, because you have no problem killing people, and you love the universe enough that you do this fast." So that's Molecule Man. You're saying Molecule Man like you know who that is. I'm going to pause for a second to check on that because I want to get this right. I don't think Molecule Man's in the movies, but I don't know what your comics background is. I'll just put it on record if anyone's watching back the VOD. Short version: Molecule Man, guy who can manipulate molecules, insanely powerful. In this comic, revealed to be basically a cosmic Trojan horse. So Molecule Man and Doctor Doom revealed that for the last 25 years, and this is where people like me had a problem because like you didn't need all this extra lore, but Molecule Man and Doctor Doom have spent the past 25 years going around the multiverse, killing every version of Molecule Man to stop him from blowing up the universe. And as they do that, basically the people who made Molecule Man, called the Beyonders, noticed, and they've been causing problems for that, like smashing planets into each other to stop Doctor Doom from doing this. Okay, so if I say characters you don't know and it just becomes gibberish, please stop me, Ace, because I do want to make this as accessible as possible. Look, I was 10. I did not understand the joys of extra lore yet. Anyway, it got really complicated and weird. Basically, all this ends with New Avengers ends with Doctor Doom, Molecule Man, and Doctor Strange meeting the Beyonders, and then everything goes white. Avengers ends with Mr. Fantastic showing up and telling everyone that he's built a life raft that can save a few people, but that's all he can do. Is the universe is going to end. He's got a life raft that can fit maybe 10 people on it. They've got an idea of who to bring for the world's best scientists to restart humanity in this interdimensional lifeboat. It's really dark stuff. Anyway, the last issue of Avengers, it's 41 or 42. I think it's 41. It's been a while. Last issue of Avengers, 41, ends with Captain America finding out about this life raft, and he's offered a spot in it, but he turns it down instead to make sure he can stop Iron Man from getting on it because he decides that Iron Man does not deserve to live past this. So Avengers 41 ends with Iron Man and Captain America just absolutely wailing on each other as the universe collapses around them. And that's the end of that. So, great run, right? All this goes into another event written by Hickman called Secret Wars. And apparently this was Jonathan Hickman's endgame plan for writing Marvel ever since he started, was this one story, Secret Wars, which steals its name from another much better comic from the 80s. I personally really like the other one better, but point is, this Secret Wars, it goes multiversal, and they've announced Avengers 6 is going to be named for this, because of course they already know what Avengers 6 is going to be. So Secret Wars, in this version, the universe has collapsed, but there's the life raft. So there's the life raft, and there's a little bit left. So Secret Wars picks up where Avengers left off. Mr. Fantastic has the life raft. He takes a few random characters. You probably heard Secret Wars. They usually adapt it in the animated stuff because the original Secret Wars is basically every Marvel character who is big at the time going to a planet to just punch out villains, which sells well and it's good. It's a good story. But this Secret Wars goes multiversal. And in the age of the multiverse, you can see why they're picking it up. So, anyway, this one begins with Mr. Fantastic getting his life raft out. Unfortunately, it hits a few bumps in the road. I forget exactly what it crashes into on the way out, but whatever it was, part of the carrier breaks off, and the rest of the Fantastic Four die. Meanwhile, on the only other universe left, which is the Ultimate Universe, Namor and Thanos are recruited to talk to another evil Reed Richards, because this is comic books, and you can easily find evil versions of your friends. And they build their own life raft based on the same design. Fortunately, on this one, Miles Morales, the Spider-Man, the Ultimate Spider-Man, sneaks on, so he survives. And basically, both these ships crash onto a planet that shouldn't be there. They wake up 8 years later in front of a very confused Doctor Strange, and who tells them that he found that this planet was created when they fought the Beyonders, and basically Doctor Doom beat them, stole their power, and is now god over everything that is left, which is this one planet that contains every shards of every alternate universe Marvel story that's been published. So you've got the Ultimate Universe in one corner, you've got 2099 in one corner, you've got this one they did called 1602, which I think is pretty good, or at least interesting concept, where all the heroes start in 1602 in one corner. They've of course got the zombie pocket, they've got the Ultron pocket, they got everything. So as part of this initiative, because of course, remember Hickman's thing is just massive mind-bending storylines. So he's blown up the entire Marvel universe. So while this is going on, all of Marvel has basically gone on hold and replaced every comic with tie-ins to this, set in different pockets of this battle world, of this new battle world. So, for example, the X-Men got replaced with a Days of Future Past tie-in. Days of Future Past being an alternate timeline story from the 80s, but this one is set in a worse version of that timeline, which is pretty impressive because that timeline's pretty bad. Star-Lord got replaced with or Star-Lord had a solo series at the time that was replaced with Star-Lord and Kitty Pryde, where Star-Lord meets an alternate version of Kitty Pryde, who he was dating at the time because comics. What other ones were there? Oh yeah, Spider-Man got replaced with an alternate Spider-Man got replaced with a comic about what if his marriage actually worked, which I think is funny because the ones who screwed up his marriage were Marvel. If you don't know, and this is a completely separate rant that I don't want to go on Jeremy Hickman rant, but Spider-Man was married in the comics for a good 20 years, and the reason he's no longer married is because he made a deal with Satan to sacrifice his marriage. And it's still canon. And they refuse to undo this. Nobody likes it. Anyway, Spider-Man made a deal with Satan. In this, they had a limited series where Spider-Man didn't make a deal with Satan, and in fact everything was fine until he had a kid. And that's comics for you. But right. Terrible decision to split side. Right. Spider-Man, Satan, comics. Oh yes, Spider-Man is also in this comic because he was one of the people to make it onto the lifeboat with the others. So we have two Spider-Men running around, and a bunch of other assorted characters who are still here. But it's them running around the world, and they try to put it back together. And ultimately, it comes to a really interesting Fantastic Four story where it's Mr. Fantastic versus Doctor Doom at the end, and Doctor Doom has found versions of the Fantastic Four that survived, but erased their memories of Mr. Fantastic specifically and taken his place. And he's also taken pains to get them out of his way so they can't stop him from being a god. So it all comes crumbling down because of course it does, and the universe gets saved because Miles Morales had a burger in his pocket. I'm not kidding. Basically, they discover the Spider's Man, I'll say, discover that Doctor Doom is using Molecule Man as an engine for this world. Basically, he's in the center holding it together, and he hasn't eaten in 8 years, so Miles offers him a burger he had in his pocket, which he acknowledges is probably a bad idea because, again, they've been in suspended animation for 8 years, and the universe that burger came in is universe that burger came from is long dead. So, yeah, he feeds him the burger. Molecule Man decides that this is good enough to turn on Doom, and they rebuild the universe. The comic ends after this with the Marvel universe gets brought back slightly different. The Ultimate Universe gets folded in, so Miles Morales is now a character in the main universe instead of being in an alternate timeline, which is probably because nobody liked Ultimate Comics except for Miles Morales. Ultimate Comics were bad. The Ultimate Comics were a bad idea. But Miles is canon now, and Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman have gone off to explore the new multiverse and help recreate it. So that was that. That was Jonathan Hickman's 10-year master plan with Marvel come to an end. After this, he left the company. They joked at the time that he was fired because Secret Wars got stuck in massive delays, and they had to add 2 issues to the run while it was going on because they just completely lost control of the story. So they joked that he was fired, but I think he was going to quit anyway. I'm not sure whose idea ultimately was for him to leave, but point is he was no longer writing at Marvel after this because that was the end of his story. Should be a good ending, right? No, because in 2019 he comes back and announces he's now got a new master plan for the X-Men. So rolls around 2019, I'm kind of tuning out of comics because basically everything has gotten really bad. Spider-Man's deal with Satan is still on the books. The X-Men are getting progressively worse, and they're like my favorite characters. So why am I still here doing this? They announced Jonathan Hickman's taking over X-Men, and I think, oh god, this is where I stop because I remembered the whole Avengers era as bad. So 2021 rolls around. I decide finally, I should just give it a chance. It's an interesting concept. So I read it. Hickman's House of X is one of the best comic books I've ever read. It is the start of his new X-Men era. Basically, he did this two series thing again where he splits it between House of X and Powers of X. You can read one without reading the other, but they're sold as a single collected edition. And in my opinion, it's a good single story. Uh, House of X, Powers of X, basically is revealed because, again, lore, that this whole time, Moira McTaggart, who, if you don't know, has been the X-Men's best human friend since the start. She and Xavier had a thing over the decades, but she was always like the human friend who came in to help out, like the best human ally you could have. It's revealed in this comic that she has been a mutant this whole time, and her power is every time she dies, she gets returned to the point of conception. So she remembers everything from all these alternate timelines. And having been through, and this is her 10th timeline, and having been through 10 timelines, she thinks that the only way that mutants and humans can ever coexist as a species is for mutants to form their own country and get on equal ground with the others. They're going to equal ground with other countries. People did not like this. I personally like it because I think it's an interesting exploration of what nationalism can be if done well and how hard it is to do well. Because the X-Men do not do it perfectly. They mess up a lot, like any country does in forming. But they try, and it's basically them advocating for themselves as an equal group, the same way they always did as people, just as their own country. And it's really cool because they do a lot of interesting things with the characters. Because they have all the characters in one place, all of them know each other now, and Hickman had some really interesting ideas for how these characters could interact and do cool things. For example, he figured out how to daisy chain 5 random characters who have never done anything together before into a resurrection machine. It required some weird stuff, like that's not like 100% accurate, but he did figure out how to daisy chain these characters to basically make infinite resurrections. And the X-Men are famous for being really bad about dead characters being dead. Like no one stays dead. Jean Grey's died probably upwards of 20 times at this point. Anyway, they figure out how to get around that, and nobody's dead anymore, and they have a country, and they gave Hickman this title, Head of X, which basically meant he was responsible for coordinating all the X-Men books that came out. There were 8 of them at the time. So that same Avengers New Avengers problem got multiplied to the power of 3. Where we now have 3 different we now have 8 books coordinated by him. He was only writing one of them at the time. He was writing just X-Men, which wasn't even like a coherent team. Under Hickman, X-Men became just the book where any characters who weren't actively doing anything could hang out. So there are issues where they go to the beach. There are issues where there's a random alien invasion. There are issues where they just go to boring World Nations meetings. They go to a UN meeting in one issue. It's great. Like unironically, the issue where Xavier, Magneto, and Apocalypse who, if you've seen X-Men Apocalypse, is this big gray guy who has been around since the dawn of time, is the first mutant supposedly, and has tried to destroy the world several times. The three of them just go to a economic forum and discuss economics with other world leaders who try not to freak out at the fact that these three walking nuclear weapons are just sitting at a table eating dinner with them. My biggest problem with that issue is that Magneto eats lobster. Because Magneto is Jewish. And that's kind of a thing that Jews don't really do. At least a lot of Jews don't. Anyway, it's really fun. But basically each different comic in this House of X era took on a different part of the mutant society in the mutant country and sort of broke down what does and doesn't work and what happens when you try to form a country with the best intentions. Like when you try to do nationalism, all the things that go wrong and all the things that go right. And I think it's an interesting exploration of the topic. I think most of it's handled well. There are some bad spots. I will admit freely there are bad spots, but there are a lot of good spots, especially Magneto. Like I joked about the Magneto lobster thing, but they you actually spelled Magneto perfectly. But they center Magneto a lot in this, and I really do appreciate that because I think as a Jew, he has probably one of the most interesting angles here because he has now canonically seen this happen twice and seen how it has gone both times with the real life Israel and the fictional Krakoa. And Israel is something that I don't want to talk much about on stream because that is only going to get me into trouble. But I will stop at I will stop at it is a complicated subject, and I feel like Krakoa is a good exploration of the reasons that it is such a complicated subject. So yeah, so Hickman did this, and I don't think he's Jewish. I don't know if he meant to do Israel commentary with it, but I am going to say that House of X issue 1, most of it is set in Israel, with Magneto being the one to explain why the mutants are starting their own country. So it's probably intentional commentary. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. My favorite comic, the one I will always recommend from that to people who know nothing about it, is X Factor. X Factor started later on in the first era, but basically the premise is after they have the Resurrection Squad around for a while, people have a lot of concerns about who gets resurrected first. So they set up a second team of people to go investigate any reported deaths or missing dead or missing mutants in order to make sure that the right people get brought back and they don't create unnecessary copies of people. Or they don't create unnecessary copies of people and they don't forget anyone. So they get a team together, and this team is insanely gay. Yes. This team is insanely gay, and they live in a giant tower together called the Boneyard, and it is so much fun. It is a great queer found family comic, and they just do weird stuff for 10 issues. Unfortunately, it got canceled because it was too good. Its main character, one of the main characters, Polaris, Magneto's daughter, was got so popular off the back of this comic that they wanted to put her in the main X-Men team. So they had to cancel the comic because they were taking Polaris out of the book. So that is, I think, the biggest mistake of Krakoa X-Men is they canceled X Factor because it was doing too well. But yeah, the X Factor. So the X Factor team consists of North Star, who is a French Canadian gay billionaire Olympic skier mutant who can fly and has super speed to the point where he can run faster than the speed of light. All of those things at once. Um, he's actually one of the first. he's one of the first openly gay characters in Marvel. He's actually, I think, the first one to get married, like on page. His husband Kyle is a major part of the book. He just lives there. Kyle doesn't have superpowers. He's just a guy that hangs out at the house sometimes. So he's fun. I love Kyle. Kyle's a great part of the book. There's a scene where Kyle comes back from work. He still has a normal job while all this is going on, and he goes to work every day. And he comes back, and all the superhero stuff's going on, and Kyle just walks in and asks what they want for dinner. It's great. It happens several times. Uh, let's see. So yeah, so uh, North Star and Kyle, Polaris, Magneto's daughter, who is not explicitly queer, but green hair and pronouns. Rachel Gray, the daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey, who is a telepath from an alternate timeline future and lives in the basement like a demon. Let's see who else. Daken, Wolverine's son, will who whose main contribution to the team is his pheromone power, which he uses to flirt and seduce everyone. Aurora, North Star's sister, who they spend the first couple of issues rescuing. It's the first mission. Prodigy, a newer character, actually created by Grant Morrison, I think, who has the power to remember everything he's ever learned. His boyfriend, Speed, who is Scarlet Witch's son, Tommy on WandaVision, which again, I don't know if you saw it, but his boyfriend shows up a few times. He's not a mutant, but he's also in the house, and North Star has to put some rules down for what they're allowed to do in the hallways. And their friend Eye-Boy. Eye-Boy is this kid, Trevor. I can't remember his last name, and half the comic where he was introduced. His first name is Trevor. Point is, this kid just has eyes all over his body, and he's really smiling and friendly to everyone all the time, and it freaks people out. I got the bar right. North Star, Daken, Prestige. That's Rachel Gray. Polaris. Yeah, Prodigy and Eye-Boy. Yeah, that's the team. Aurora is kind of on it, kind of not. Kyle lives with them. Did I miss anyone? No. Anyway, that's the team. They go on some really cool adventures. My personal favorite, they spend a few issues fighting Mojo, who is an interdimensional evil TV producer, because that is a thing that the X-Men deal with regularly. They go to that one to rescue Shatterstar, who is another old member of X-Factor and X-Force. Shatterstar's deal is that he is from the Mojoverse, which is Mojo's reality TV universe, and he has not been explicitly gay forever, but he certainly has a boyfriend. And there's extended Wikipedia article about this. You can look up the Richter Shatterstar relationship, where they go where, at least when I checked it a couple of years ago, they went to great lengths to not have to say that they were dating, because had not been confirmed, but everything about them was that, like, to the point where everyone except the author was saying it. So Shatterstar's in this comic too. Meanwhile, Richter was over in Excalibur doing a different thing. Excalibur being the magic comic where they were fighting in another interdimensional realm called Avalon, where Morgan Le Fay was trying to invade Earth. So Richter had to go in and become an Earth mage to stop her, and the X-Men are normal. So yeah, that's X-Factor for you. And that's just the first half. The second half, no, what's the second half? The second half, Shatterstar fights Death Goddess. It's a great comic, and they canceled it because Polaris made the main team. Unfortunately, after that point, when Polaris made the main team, they were also just generally redoing the line. Hickman left shortly after, because his Grand Vision played out. Unfortunately, it didn't, actually. That's not true. His Grand Vision did not play out this time, because remember how I said he had a massive plan? Well, this time he didn't get to go through with it, because I think, and this has not been confirmed, but the way they set up the Moira thing is they were setting up like she was going to make a sacrifice and sacrifice this timeline she was going to sacrifice this timeline to reset it and save the mutants again. They ended up not going that way because everyone really liked Krakoa, and they liked writing this setting where the X-Men had a country and everything was great. So what they did instead was they rewrote the ending. So this time, Moira was secretly evil the whole time. You know, the best human ally they had for decades. She was secretly evil this whole time, and actually has been working with every bad guy to stop or to get the X-Men to basically destroy themselves with this and cure mutants forever. So Xavier and Magneto stop her, but then they tell the others about. They tell everyone else in the government about this, and the government at this point is made up of 12 people because it is always just these 12 people, and half of them are villains. Basically, they tell the truth, and they all agree that it's screwed up, but at this point they're locked into it, and they are going to make the best of it. And that's where Hickman left the story. And since then, they haven't had an organizer, but they have had initiatives. They just did a thing where they had another alternate timeline where somebody was cloning Moira and killing the clones every time they wanted to reset the timeline, and that was a whole thing. And they fought the Eternals, and humans found out about the resurrection machine, but also that's broken now, but it isn't broken. And I kind of stopped reading everything except the one comic where Magneto goes to Mars. Yeah, I just said that. Magneto Goes to Mars is a 12-person government, and it is half the people absolutely should be there, half people should not be in this 12-person government. Apocalypse is there. That guy had a movie named after him because he was that evil. Mystique's on the government. They put Magneto there, but honestly, he's one of the better ones. Like, I would trust Magneto at this point more than I trust most of these other people. It's not elected either. So yeah, Magneto goes to Mars because what happens is there's an event called X of Swords, or actually it's called Ten of Swords, but it's spelled X of Swords because Jonathan Hickman was being clever that day, and I refuse to acknowledge it. Where basically Avalon, the thing from the interdimensional comic that's not X Factor, has a gateway to another universe with other secret mutants who have been around this whole time, and Apocalypse has known about them the whole time. And now they want to invade Earth. So they have to have a big magical interdimensional sword fight. And it is a great comic. It's really weird in places, but it's still fun. But yeah, magical interdimensional sword fight. At the end of it, all these other mutants come to live on Earth, but they aren't really adapted to Earth life, so the X-Men decide the best solution is to send them to Mars. And no, they can't breathe on Mars or anything, but the X-Men send over a team of 10 mutants to go terraform the planet in an evening. And they have a big party on Earth where everyone gets to watch them terraform the planet. So yeah, they just send millions of interdimensional mutants to Mars, which is now perfectly breathable. And they also announced it's the new capital of the solar system. So all the aliens go there first. So anyway, after the whole Moira incident, Magneto decides he's had enough and is going to retire, so he goes to Mars. And then they start a new series about that, X-Men Red, where basically he's dealing with the Mars mutant politics and all the Earth agencies that want a piece of the colonized Mars and what this society is like. And it's really fun, and I really like it. Unfortunately, 10 issues in, they kill off Magneto because you can't have anything nice. Sorry, not 10 issues, 7 issues in. Yeah, they had an event called Judgment Day where the X-Men fought the Eternals, and part of that, Magneto had his heart ripped out and came back to Earth. I should have stopped before I said that. Sorry. But yeah, it gets gory. Magneto has his heart ripped out, but then he manages to survive long enough to on his own willpower to go back to Earth, beat up the bad guy, and then die. So remember how I said that they had the resurrection machine? He asks that they don't use it on him because he doesn't want to deal with this anymore. So they just kind of let him die. So here we are. We are in the era where it is impossible for the X-Men to die, and they still found a way to kill off Magneto. This is why I don't really read these things so much anymore. X-Men Red's still good. They did a great arc immediately after that with Cyclops' evil brother coming back from space, and Storm's taken over the government there. It's fun. X-Men Red is a legitimately good read. The only cautionary note I have about that is the fact that the plot point is of Magneto having his heart ripped out. But outside of that, it's good. Where's I going with all this? Oh yeah, Jonathan Hickman is not in charge anymore, and so they kind of lost coherency on that one, and they killed Magneto, the best character. If you walk away with anything from that insane rant, it's that I recommend House of X, and X Factor, and X of Swords, I guess, and X-Men Red. In other comics news, I'm going to pause, take a breath there, and ask if there are any questions first before I get into other comics news, actually. Yeah, I'm going to pause for a minute, catch my breath. Any questions? Comics news, comics news, comics news. Okay, so the big one. Remember how I said Spider-Man made a deal with Satan and sacrificed his marriage? So yeah, that happened like 10 years ago. Spider-Man has made a series of bad decisions ever since then. It actually happened more than 10 years ago. It happened in 2005, I think. The Spider-Man philosophy generally is with the writers. The writers have this philosophy that Spider-Man can never be happy. If you've seen Across the Spider-Verse, I think it's the best thing they've ever done with the concept of them playing with, okay, what does that mean? What if people decide he can never be happy? What if Spider-Man always has to have bad things happen to him? So yeah, that's why his marriage got sacrificed to Satan, because if he's married, he's doing okay, and we can't have that in a Spider-Man comic. So currently in the Spider-Man comic, they gave so they gave the comic shortly after that incident to Dan Slott, who wrote it for a good 10 years. And he was writing it when I was getting into comics, and his stuff's pretty good. I do recommend a lot of it, especially Superior Spider-Man, which is an unpopular opinion, but I like Superior Spider-Man. Basically, Dr. Octopus takes over for a bit. Right. Back to Superior Spider-Man. So after Dan Slott, they struggled through a couple of the writers. They had Nick Spencer for a while, who I think is a good writer. A lot of people don't like him, but it was at least interesting. Anyway, eventually they settled on Zeb Wells. Zeb Wells, I like. I think he's a good writer. He did a series for Krakoa and X-Men, the House of X era, called Hellions, which is basically Marvel's Suicide Squad, and I think it's pretty good. But this comic has everyone hating him. So when it comes to Spider-Man, the first thing he did was drop a teaser of just Spider-Man alone crying in the dirt, and the caption was, "What did Peter do?" And this immediately got people annoyed because it was starting off a new era for the character with presumed plotline of bad thing happens to Peter Parker, which of course is a totally fresh and original story idea. So that starts. The first issue comes out, people are even less happy because it opens with Mary Jane being married to another guy and having kids with him. I haven't read this comic. I've absorbed most of the plot beats through osmosis, but basically they just keep on doubling down on Mary Jane is happy with this other guy now, and they have kids, and this is the future, and literally no one likes Peter Parker anymore in universe. And then he teams up with Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. She had a show recently, but if you don't know her, she was a really popular character invented about 9 years ago. I believe 2014 she debuted. Pakistani American teenager, Muslim Muslim superhero, very prominent. People love her, like most popular mainstream Muslim superhero ever. And also one of Marvel's best characters and best ideas of the last decade. So she's in this comic too, and they start teasing, and Marvel starts teasing that a big thing is coming to Spider-Man in issue 25, sorry, issue 26 of this run, and people are really worried about this because they keep teasing something bad's gonna happen to Spider-Man, and at this point, what else is there to go wrong? Anyway, the page leaks like 3 weeks ago. The page leaks that Miss Marvel gets killed off. So Marvel goes into immediate damage control and announces it publicly and announces all the comics they have spitting out of it about Miss Marvel being killed off. And this is annoying to everyone for the obvious reasons. And it's also worth pointing out that The Marvels comes out this year, a movie featuring all the Captain Marvel characters, including Miss Marvel. So they're killing her off to raise press for the movie. I haven't seen the Miss Marvel show because I really don't care enough anymore to keep up with all the Marvel TV shows. But I hear it's good. I hear people like it, except for the last episode. But apparently in the show, they imply that Miss Marvel is a mutant in the MCU. This is interesting because in the comics, she is decidedly not. She was an Inhuman. The Inhumans are another semi-human race living on Earth in secret for all this time. But she was written to be an Inhuman because in 2014, when the character was released, Marvel was really trying to downplay the X-Men because they didn't have the film rights. That's actually true. They sold off the film rights to the X-Men, so they didn't want to. So they wanted to promote the Inhumans as a mutant replacement. So they made Miss Marvel their brand new popular character in Inhuman. So the theory going around, and this has not been confirmed yet, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't true at this point, is that Marvel killed her off so that they can stick her in the X-Men Resurrection Machine right before the movie comes out and resurrect her and reveal she was secretly a mutant the whole time. So nobody's happy with this. This screws over everyone and everything at once, and it is an impressively bad move on so many levels. And that's the current comic drama from Marvel. Is they killed her off for movie sales and probably to retcon her into being a mutant for the movies. So, like, there are a number of reasons that this is bad, and I think you can probably guess most of them. For me, the biggest issue is this is a character that people love and means a lot to a lot of people, and you cannot just rip that away and hand it back 2 seconds later and pretend that nothing happened. My issue with the mutant thing is that it's hard to justify, and also, why are you dragging so many other people into this? Like the number of people in storylines that have to get messed up for this quick retcon to work is just insane and unpleasant for everyone involved and embarrassing for the company, for the character, for the writers. I really feel for everyone involved in this. It's a bad decision all around. And I'm saying this as someone who loves mutants, and I think that she's going the best part of the Marvel Comics universe for this. But still, this is not how you do this. And you do not try to you do not try to kill off a character, milk killing off the character, milk bringing back the character, and get a movie release in like 3 months. None of this is okay. So that's the current damage. Also, by the way, fun fact, she is currently best friends with Miles Morales, who is, after he was brought to the main Marvel Universe, joined a teen superhero team with her. They co-founded the team together, and they've been best friends ever since. And guess who is not in the issue where she gets killed off? Her best friend, Miles Morales. So yeah, Marvel headquarters deserves to be eaten. They have just absolutely butchered this in every way possible, and I'm so sorry to everyone who really like who needs Miss Marvel and gets that much out of her, even if I personally don't. Like, I get it. Like, you heard I got my they killed off Magneto, they killed off the old Jew, and now they killed off like the main Muslim superhero. It is embarrassing. Yeah. It is embarrassing for them, embarrassing for everyone involved. And it is frustrating to a lot of people because, again, Marvel thinks they can get away with this. And they probably can. They're going to bring the character back in a couple of months. People are going to move on. And they're going to assume this is a good idea and do it again at some point. Just like when Spider-Man sold his marriage to Satan. And for 20 years, they've been teasing constantly. Oh, is this going to be when we finally undo that? Nope. They have not undone that. I don't know if they're ever going to undo that because they keep bringing it up. I wasn't a comic book fan at the time that Spider-Man sold his marriage to Satan, which I keep saying because it is ridiculous, and this is why people don't like comics. I wasn't a comic book fan at the time, but people had a similar reaction to that, and it's the same problem of they don't care. They don't care, and they know they can get away with it. And you can make stupid creative decisions like that, and no one's going to stop you. Because what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Not do any Spider-Man stuff? I don't know how this conversation started, or if it even is a conversation. Although, fun fact about the Satan storyline, that comic is called One More Day. It was loosely the inspiration for Spider-Man No Way Home. Because a side benefit of the deal with Satan is that everyone forgot that Peter Parker was Spider-Man after he told the world. It allowed them to hit reset as much as possible on the character. Oh yeah, comics news. Okay, funnier comics news, because I don't want to be too depressing about this. Over on the DC side, DC has been in damage control for the past 7 years. Because because in 2011 they did a thing called the New 52, where they reset their universe and erased like 90% of their stories from canon. DC, this is part of DC's regular strategy. They do this all the time to keep their characters relatively young. Marvel gets around it by just pretending that things happen more and more recently, but DC does a big thing every 10 years or so to reset everyone's ages. But New 52 was particularly aggressive version of this. And since 2016, they've tried various things to reverse it and try to win back favor, to varying degrees of success. Some of it's worked better than others. But their last attempt brought back a wave of characters. Actually, just learned about this today. They specifically brought back a wave of sidekicks from the 40s. And one of these sidekicks is the amazingly named Sparkington J. Northrup. So Sparkington J. Northrup is a very minor character who I don't think has actually appeared in a DC comic before. DC went through a thing in the 80s where they tried to buy up a bunch of smaller brands to get those characters into their canon and expand sales in that direction. One of those companies was called Charlton Comics. They had a collection of characters, including the Blue Beetle, who is getting a movie later this year. But in the 40s version of the Blue Beetle had a sidekick named Sparky. Sparky, short for Sparkington J. Northrup, was basically a Robin knockoff. Like some kid who was there to help out. The most memorable thing about him is that his name is Sparkington, and he was supposed to be a relatable team in the 1940s. Anyway, nobody's thought about Sparky since the 40s. So when DC was looking for old characters to bring back to prove that they were really committed to restoring canon, who do they go to but Sparkington J. Northrup? There is not much more to say about that except for his name. I spent probably 30 minutes trying to find anything else interesting that came from this attempt to bring characters back. And the most interesting thing is that guy. Like, this is where we are with this. But yeah, Blue Beetle is just like Blue Beetle has a really interesting history because he's been through all this, and so people buying him up and people trying to figure out what to do with this character. Actually, there's a video I really like from Atop the Fourth Wall about it's basically a 3-hour documentary on the entire history of the character from the 40s to the video came out in 2016, so it ends with the 2016 reboot starting. But it's a great perspective on the character throughout the years and just how many different weird things they've tried. I don't know if you saw that. I got an alert from Adobe that something should be updated soon. I don't care. Anyway, that's the comics news right now. Trying to think if there's anything else worth bringing up. I got Miss Marvel. I got the X-Men being weird. I got Sparkington's alive. Oh yeah, The Flash ended. That's a TV show. Oh wait. Oh, I didn't talk about that. So I saw Across the Spider-Verse. That's what's got me thinking about comic books again in this capacity. One of my favorite movies ever, probably already. Immediate win. It's half a movie. I love it. I don't know if you've seen it, Ace. You should absolutely go see it. If you haven't. It is so freaking good. We've gotten a great movie run between Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I love the Guardians movies generally because just generally they're my favorite kind of comic book story where you take something completely ridiculous and then by the end you are completely and totally emotionally invested, and then you remember that you're watching a talking raccoon. Like that is the thing I love about comics is the ability to get sucked in. I will not spoil Spider-Verse for you. I will just say go see it. But that's what I love about it is you get I did say you get deep, you get so emotionally invested, and then you remember that you're watching a talking raccoon. That is what this genre is at its best. Is when you are taking Sparkington J. Northrup seriously. When you get legitimately upset about a character that you know will be back from the dead in a couple months because you care that much about the person. And I think it's part of the problem of when they screw it up on the writer's side. When the production screws it up and gives you bad material to work with, it is disrespectful to you because you have put yourself out there for these fictional characters and they're outside of your control and bad things can happen to them. And that's the mistake they always make with Spider-Man. That's the mistake they're making with Miss Marvel right now. It's the mistake they made with killing Magneto. There's it's such a it demands a lot of you, and then when it doesn't pay you back, it hurts. That's what I love about those. I love the investment, and I think that's also what I like in Minecraft YouTube. Also, is just like the fact that I care this much about what some guy named Mumbo Jumbo does. Like I'm taking Quackity seriously. But that's what to me that's what it should be. But yeah, Spider Verse, great movie. Also, by the way, great comic. I read the original Spider Verse comic when it came out. It's nothing like the movies. I personally like it. I recommend it. It goes pretty lore dumpy. Like the premise of it, the tagline is every Spider-Man ever, and it does what the movie does, but with much less restraint. It getting as many Spider people onto the same page as possible. Spider Gwen, Spider Woman. We called her Spider Gwen back then because we did. It was a bad idea. It was a bad idea, but we called her Spider Gwen. Yeah, Spider Woman, Gwen Stacy came back from the dead for that, and it's redefined the character. It's one of the great inventions of modern comics is bringing back Gwen Stacy like this. But getting yes, the Spider Verse comic is a 6 issue run. It's in Amazing Spider-Man. It wasn't a separate. It wasn't a separate event like Infinity or Secret Wars. It was straight up just 6 issues of the Spider-Man comic. The arc was called Spider Verse. They had everyone in it. The villains in it are these immortal vampire, immortal multiversal vampires that are the family of an old Spider-Man villain from the I want to say 80s. I'm not entirely sure when Morland's from, but basically immortal vampire multiverse vampires who feed on spider people. Like their essence specifically is the only thing that can feed them. So they travel the multiverse hunting for spider people to kill and eat. And so Spider UK, who is not in the movies but should be because he is amazing. Spider UK, who is also a member of the Captain Britain Corps, which are another multiverse defense team. Spider UK assembles all of the Spider people from all the universes, including Peter and Miles and Gwen and Spider Woman, Jessica Drew, and Spider-Man 2099, who is in the new movie, Spider Ham, Spider-Man Noir, Doctor Octopus because of that one time he was Spider-Man. He gets them all in a room and has them go across the multiverse to save the Spider people. It was a really fun, really insane 6 issues that again is what I love about comics is you catch yourself taking this stuff seriously. And after that comic came out, it took off. The Into the Spider-Verse movie came out 4 years later. No Way Home comes out 2021. 2021. They did a sequel called Spider-Geddon that I have not read because it looks pretty bad. They're doing one right now called End of Spider-Verse, which implies they're killing everyone off, but again, it's comics. They'll be fine next week. And it makes much less sense now that Miles is in the main universe too, but look, they have like 6 Spider people in the main universe and that's never stopped them before. But yeah, the original comic's pretty good. It ties into Superior Spider-Man, so like there's a bit of lore necessary. The important stuff from that is Superior Spider-Man took place during a time when Peter Parker was dead and Dr. Octopus was acting as Spider-Man. because he'd swapped brains with Peter and understood when it meant to be a hero at the time. He Unrelated, he no longer understands what it means to be a hero because of a deal he made with Satan. I don't know why this is a recurring thing in Spider-Man, but Spider people keep making deals with Satan. I don't get it. No one does. Anyway, there's a time displaced Doctor Octopus from before Peter Parker came back and he put his brain back in his own body and made a deal with Satan that shows up in this comic. Um, there's a scene in there's a scene in Superior Spider-Man where he's trying to save a collapsing physics machine. I forget exactly what it was supposed to be. Where he gets thrown out of time for a minute. So during that minute he was thrown out of time, he ends up in 2099, where He learns about the interdimensional vampires that eat spider people for everything, and he decides to form his own army to stop them. And then that shows up in the comic where he meets up with the mainline Spider-Man, and they all first punch each other for a bit because superheroes, and then they stop punching each other and work together. It's really fun. It's a fun comic. I really recommend it. I recommend Spider-Verse. Great 6-issue run. Plus, the epilogue's kind of part of it too. There's 7 issues. But yeah, out of that, we got some good ones. And it goes deep on the spider lore. So not only do you get the vampires, you get Doctor Octopus, you get both of Spider-Man's clones because he has multiple clones. By the way, one of them has made a deal with Satan too. The other one has made fun of him for making a deal with Satan. And that's the basics of Spider-Verse. And there's so much Spider-Man lore I touched on and implied there that I could talk about for an entire another extra stream, and I probably will if no one stops me. And that is your comic book breakdown. Now you know about comics and you can start reading. My advice, don't. Actually, that's not true. I have recommended several ones I liked during this. If I had to say one thing to read that I think is unironically good and like won't get you sucked into all this drama, X Factor, definitely. Easiest of everything I've said to fall in love with and understand without falling into the rest of this context. And if you do get sucked in and have to learn more, the wikis are your friend. I'm your friend. Atop the Fourth Wall is a great resource. Comic Story. There are 1,000 channels on YouTube, but I like Atop the Fourth Wall because the guy who hosts it, Linkara, is funny and he snarks on it a lot. Like he acknowledges this is stupid. He has a running bit called comics history you don't care about but need to know to understand this comic. Sorry, it's comics history you don't care about but need to understand what's going on here. Uh, that I think is great. It's a great joke about the whole thing, and like you got to be a little silly with it. You got to be a little silly with it because it is an insane thing, and you're being asked a lot is being asked of you. I'm gonna heal up. Um, Minecraft potion of experience. Oh, I got muted. I don't know where I got cut off. Sorry. Thank you for pointing it out, Ace. Yeah, X Factor 2020. It's the 2020 run of X Factor. If you're gonna pick up anything from this, that's probably the most friendly thing I've mentioned in this stream. Although if you are feeling up to the larger world building stuff, House of X is a House of X it is designed to be an introduction to this modern X-Men era, and basically everything that comes out of it is good. I say basically because there's some stuff there's some exceptions, like X Force is mid to bad, really bad if you think too much about certain characters or at all about one. Wait, how long ago was I muted? Basically, I had to get XP for my tools. Comics are weird. Atop the fourth wall. Yeah, atop the fourth wall. I do recommend the blue skying video, especially. It's one of my favorites. Although, my absolute favorite episode of Atop the Fourth Wall is this episode on Action Comics 775. What's so funny about truth, justice, and the American way? It is the story that made me understand Superman. He goes up against a collection of other new heroes who want him to be the edgelord that the DCEU is trying to make him. Okay, thanks. He goes up against an army of superheroes who wants to make him the edgelord or want him to be this edgelord, and he wins on his own terms and shows why he is the way he is, why he has to be the way he is, why Superman is Superman. Apparently, that's what the James Gunn movie is going to be about, is that comic, and I'm so excited. So yeah, those are my recs for this week. Uh, we did not finish digging this out in the 90 minutes. I had enough time to rant about Jonathan Hickman's last 10 years of published works while digging this out. It's fine. That's so funny. Yeah, so if you don't watch Linkara videos, if you don't end up watching them, maybe next time I'll do the One More Day stream where I talk about One More Day and how weird that is. Because that comic, I scratch, because the Satan stuff is only like 20% of everything weird that goes on in that comic. Like, it gets truly bizarre. I will not say anything more, though. I will tease that for next time to keep you coming back. I learned from the best. This is what comics do. You never get the full story in one issue. You gotta buy them all. But yeah, with that, we've been digging for over 90 minutes at this point. I really thought I was going to get to designing this thing this time. I guess I'm not. My throat's starting to hurt, so may have to call it here. Get back to the surface. Okay, let's do this. Thank you for coming. It's been great having you, Ace. Thank you to everyone who watched the VOD of this later. It has been absolutely lovely to do this. I'm glad I got to rant about a special interest of mine again. Come back next time for more on why Spider-Man sold his marriage to Satan. Have a nice day. Don't make deals with Satan. Goodbye.